Hello and welcome to the 12 Months Marathon Podcast with me, John Hill, the running podcast for the over 35s with Marathon Dreams, episode 42. I have a very special guest with me today. I've got Lauren Redhead with me today, who, by the way, um, is over 35 and did have a marathon dream, which she has just fulfilled last Sunday as we record this in Manchester. So a little bit of background. I'll let Lauren talk about herself, but I'll just do a little bit of background. So I've worked with Lauren now for just over 16 weeks. She came to me at the end of 2024 to get some help in running her first marathon in Manchester last weekend. So we worked together for that. Lauren, sorry, has been very, very engaged in the program. It's been great to work with, has absorbed everything, and yes, she completed the marathon. But I'll let Lauren tell her story, which is quite a cool story as well. So, how are you, Lauren?
I am good. I'm still
Oh,
feeling happy.
good.
Legs are feeling all right now, so everything's on the right track.
Marvelous, marvelous. So, first question for me, if you don't mind, for the listeners, is just tell me a little bit about your running background. How did you get into it? And well, so basically, the two parts of the question. First part of the question is running background. Second part of the question is how did we get from running background to I want to run a marathon?
So I started running in 2013, and that was kind of just by accident. I was trying to get a little bit fitter. I'd moved to a new place. I just found myself in a place where actually I was going to the gym, and then I just started trying running in the gym, and to great surprise, found that I enjoyed it. But I was just running around. I was just going to the gym. I was doing any runs. I started to do some races, but I didn't really have a structure around that. I suppose there was probably a lot less social media at that point
Yeah,
compared to now. So
yeah,
I wasn't really looking for running content or learning anything about it. I was just literally running and just seeing what happened. Um, and then I kept up with that. I've done quite a lot of half marathons, and on the one hand, I felt like this is just me. This is what I enjoy doing. This is sustainable for me. And then I did have this kind of, would I like to run a marathon? And that became, I would like to run a marathon before I'm 40.
okay,
Various reasons that thought got put away for a little bit of time.
okay,
Suddenly, um, I'm 39, and so
yeah.
that was the opportunity. Yeah.
What I suppose, and obviously as comfortable as you're happy you are to share things here. What made you think marathon? What was there a trigger? Was there a prompt?
I think having done quite a few half marathons and also feeling like I was getting a little bit better at running that race.
Yeah.
So, by which I mean I was running the whole way and I wasn't completely wiped out by the end of it.
Okay.
So I felt like I'd improved a little bit. Um, and then I probably, at the point that I initially thought that, didn't even have any conception of an ultra marathon or what that was. So in my mind, that was like the the longest race that you were
Yeah.
going to do. So
Yeah.
it was, could I go to that length? Could I do
Yeah.
that one? So it was kind of a, would I be able to do it? What would it be like kind of question, but not necessarily this is something that I absolutely have to do.
Right.
Until sort of the last year or so is when I really felt like that.
Yeah. And what's your current running setup in prior to sort of marathon training? Obviously, did you run with a club? How often did you go out? What did it look like?
So um I go to a running club, which is quite a social running club.
Yeah.
And so we do a social run, some of us do other runs. We also raise money for charity. Um, that's just quite an enjoyable thing. But within that club, there are some people who are pretty good runners
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
And there were so a number of them and some other people who were doing the marathon for the first time did Manchester last year,
Right.
and I was tracking them on the tracking
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was just so excited for them that it made me think, okay, come on, just enter it.
Yeah.
But other than that, I'm still running on my own most of the time.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm just doing probably 3 or 4 runs a week. One of them's a long run. I'm doing 2 half marathons a year. So
Right.
I've got, reasons to keep running, but one of the main reasons is that I just enjoy going out and going for a run.
Okay.
So
Good. And what does, I suppose on that, we'll continue on that theme then. What does running do for you?
so on the very best day,
Yeah.
which is like yesterday was one of these days, um, it's just feeling happy to be outside, enjoying moving. I feel like that's a time when I'm doing something that's for myself,
Yeah.
that is not interrupted by any emails.
Yeah.
Um, it is a way that I've made friends. I think, I feel like since I've started running, my overall health has just been better
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
And then I think there is that element of you can have a goal, you can show yourself that you've improved in doing something or that you've achieved something. And that's not to be underestimated because even when those are like really small goals that, it's not completed a marathon, but it's just completed a course record in the park run one
Yeah.
Saturday or something
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that. It just gives you a little boost, doesn't it? And then
Yeah.
I think that positivity is an important thing as well.
And how does it fit with your sort of professional life, your work life, your home life? How much of a challenge is it trying to incorporate running into that?
It can be.
Yeah.
Uh, I My job is quite far away from where I live.
Right.
And so although sometimes I work from home,
Yeah.
a lot of the time I'm traveling and I'm also staying away from home
Right.
for work. So at times that can mean that there's only 3 or 4 days that I can run,
Yeah.
and all of those days are next to each other
Okay.
in the week.
Yeah.
So what that might, if you're training for something, it means that you've got to work out what runs can you do on those
Yeah.
days,
Yeah.
and that's the time that you've got. So the absolute ideal of you could do everything perfect on the day that you were going, the best day for it, um, isn't possible all the time.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then I think more recently, and maybe just before I started training for the marathon, I started to think to myself, well, this is something that's important to me.
Yeah.
How do I make more time? So obviously, like the traveling and everything is still there, but for example, when I'm working from home, will I put a fence around my running time? And I started to do that, and it's an hour, or something like that. It's not
Yeah.
a really huge amount of time. It's very easy to just let your work to feel like, oh, I should prioritize that. I've got to do something for someone else. I'll prioritize that.
Yeah.
Um, and actually, as I started to do that a little bit more consistently, I wouldn't say perfect, but a little bit better, I think there's a benefit from that, which just it makes those days nicer. And if
Yes, of
those
course.
days are nicer, you're a bit happier, and then everything else feels a little bit better. And so I think that's something that's a work in progress, but one that I will continue to work
Perfect.
on.
Yeah. Good. Fantastic. Okay, then. So let's get into the marathon. Let's talk about the marathon itself. So when did you enter Manchester? What point did you, was it
About
early?
2 days after the race last year, yeah, I
I was
was.
straight. Okay, so it was straight after last year. Okay, cool. And when you after you entered it, I guess what was your thought process then? How did you think about the future? What were like training, that sort of thing? What was did you have a plan?
Not really,
No.
sort of.
Yeah.
I had already a 10K race and then a half marathon in October
Yeah.
and then a half marathon in December.
Yeah.
So I had the thought, well, okay, if I've done the half, if I can keep that level of fitness, then I'll have to try and build up from there
Yeah.
after Christmas.
Yeah.
And I had sort of the idea of maybe I should increase the mileage that I'm doing per week.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And that's where I was at that point. It was sort of like try to make a plan and hope kind of
Okay.
place.
Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do things a little bit in reverse. So I'm going to talk about, I want you to talk about the marathon, the actual marathon first, and then we'll go back over the training for it. So talk me through your experiences. So as we sit here now, as we're recording this, it's the Thursday after the Sunday. So you've done Manchester Marathon on Sunday. Talk to me about that.
So how it went,
Yeah, obviously your first one. So this is, it's brand new experience for you. So talk me through your experiences.
I think I so first thing I would say is I was not prepared for how busy it was going to be at the beginning of the race.
Okay.
And so I thought I left the house really early. I did leave the house really, really early. Should have gone even earlier. Um, I queued up for ages to go to the toilet and then I abandoned the queue because I was worried that I was going to miss the starting wave and I didn't want to go any later because it was hot. And actually, when I got to the start and then it started, I felt a lot happier than I did in the minutes before that.
Yeah.
So I think the morning was like stress. And then as soon as I started running, I thought, okay, well, this is what I came here to do. So
Yeah.
now I'm just, now I'm moving. Um, and so I felt like I started off quite well. I was trying to keep an eye on just don't go too fast. Um, but I also had in my mind a kind of, well, maybe if I can run to feel and I feel like I'm, quite relaxed,
Hmm.
that might be okay. Um, and so then I started off probably okay. I think it started to get hotter
Yeah.
during the day. And I was doing everything that I'd planned. So, I had in my mind if I can have the gel exactly at the point that I've planned, if I can have the water in the way that I've planned,
Hmm.
just stick with that and, just keep going with that. And so I was probably doing that until about halfway.
Right.
And then at halfway, I felt like it was getting more difficult, particularly with the heat. Although I've just looked at the splits that the race
Yeah.
recorded
Yeah.
different stages, and actually I think probably I was doing better than I thought till about 30K. I probably
Okay.
thought it was harder at that point
Yeah.
than the time shows.
Yeah.
Um, and then that's also where probably when I'd got to about 16 miles and I should have had a gel then, and I just felt a bit sick and I thought I can't put that in my mouth. I'm just going to keep going
Yeah.
because I'd rather run than throw up, basically.
Yeah.
So
Good plan. Yep.
I had a bit of a tough time, I think, between that 16 and 20.
Yeah.
And then that's where I thought, well, look, this is going to be the hardest bit. And at that point, it was very hot. I was probably feeling a bit depleted because I hadn't had the fuel that I planned to have.
Hmm.
Um, so then I did start doing a bit of a kind of run walk strategy at that point. Managed to eat some Voom, which was like it was an emergency fuel that I brought because I didn't want to stop and chew, but I thought, well, if I'm doing a walk, I might as well chew something
Yeah.
anyway. Um, and basically at that point, I think I just tried to keep myself going. And, I did have in my mind, because I'd raised money for charity, there was no way that I was not going to finish
Yeah.
this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And also, I was seeing people be taken away in ambulances and collapse at the side of the road and in a wheelchair, so nor did I want to be in that situation either.
Yeah.
So it was just to kind of keep moving, just try to keep going for as long as you can, have a little walk break, get back going, keep going. Um, and then I've probably stayed in that place of just thinking about that for quite a while. Then I saw the 25 miles sign, and then my brain just went, oh, you're not that far away from the end now.
Yeah.
You can do this. So, I wouldn't say I ran every step of that last 1.2, but it did get me going a little bit more because I thought, well, I'm nearly there now.
Yeah.
Just get to the end and then you're
Yeah.
done. Um, and then get to the end. And to be honest with you, was just really relieved to have
Yeah.
finished. But then I think quite happy and quite overwhelmed. And, I know that it was like a tough day and it's a hard thing to do.
Yeah. It is.
But I just was so glad to have finished it that I'd done what I said I was going to do,
Yeah.
and yeah, and that I wasn't taken away in an ambulance. So all of those things at that point, delighted.
Brilliant.
Um, yeah,
Thank you. So, talk me through your training. And so, we originally spoke December, I think, 2024. Talk to me about your training. How did your training go? What were your lessons from it? Yeah, just an overview of the training process.
So when we spoke originally,
Yeah.
I had written down a plan that I had found online, which I
Okay.
think was like a Nuffield Health one.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, when I was writing it down, I did have in my mind, is this enough? I'm not sure that this, because it was sort of 3 runs a week. The runs in the week were not that long all the time.
Yeah.
And I was looking at it thinking, well, I can do this. And then I was also thinking, is that really all I need to do? So then when I spoke to you, I had a look at your plan
Yep.
for first time marathon. So wrote that one down as well. And so what I did do right at the beginning of the training was because I'd just done a half, I was running some slightly longer runs. So right at the beginning, I did some of the longer runs a bit longer.
Yep.
Uh, but I think the difference is your plan had more runs, um, so more like weekly mileage and more kind of structure to it.
Yep.
So that was, I think I felt like, okay, well, this is hard, but maybe the hard element of it is what I need actually.
Yep. Okay.
I think this is, it's going to be hard to run a marathon, and I don't know if I want to go out on the day and just hope. Maybe I want to feel like I'm more well prepared. So that was, I mean, it was difficult.
Yeah.
A lot of the runs were really tiring. A lot of the weeks were really tiring. Um, I think I struggled a bit with like the pain from some of it and working out, can I keep going the next day or whatever the next runs,
Yeah.
can I really like get through them all?
Yeah. You mean soreness there, not injury. You mean like
Yeah,
soreness. Yeah.
just I mean, I think I had like a few niggles and things like
Yeah.
that, but managed to manage it so it didn't become an injury. I
Yeah, of
mean, I
course.
missed one run. I missed one 5 mile run.
Oh,
Um,
so across the whole plan,
yeah,
you only actually missed one run. Okay.
I did. And when I added up the total mileage that I'd ran, because like when you do like an extra half a mile or
Yeah.
whatever, I didn't miss any mileage.
Okay.
So I felt okay about
Brilliant.
that. Um, so I mean, it was a lot. Actually, I think it gets quite reassuring in a way to think, okay, well, I've got my, whatever runs I'm going to do this week and I've planned where they're going to go. And so I think you get into that mindset of, not how am I going to do this marathon,
Mm.
but just what am I going to do this week? And it's the
Yeah.
first time that I've actually followed a plan so for some of the half marathons, I've followed a plan in terms of the long runs,
Yeah.
weekends, and building that up. Then in the week, of just doing whatever, just running around whatever runs I feel
Okay.
like. So
Yeah.
it's the first time I've done a plan that actually accounted for every single day,
Okay.
uh, which again, I think there's just a real benefit to that, which is it takes away the questions of like, what should I do now?
Yeah.
What should I do next?
Yeah.
And also, I think so. There was one week where I've done a half marathon race on the Sunday,
Yeah.
and I ran only like 30 seconds off my PB in that race. So I went out pretty quickly in
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And then 4 days later, I had a 20-mile run to do.
Yeah.
And that is just, if you'd asked me in December, I would have said there's no way that I'll be able to do that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to do that. And I mean, it wasn't, the most enjoyable 20 miles that I've ever ran, but I did run it.
Yeah.
So, I think there's also all of those little milestones where you can just say, well, I have actually done that.
Yeah.
And that that is part of the plan, even if it's not written on the plan.
Yeah.
And that I think was really important for me in terms of just building confidence of like, could I actually do this? And
Yeah.
what will it be like when I do it? That's yeah.
Brilliant. So you mentioned getting to the start line and feeling prepared. Now, aside from the fact of the two things, A, you've never done a marathon, and B, let's obviously the heat was a factor as well on the day, as many people listening will know. Did you feel prepared when you got to the start line based on your training?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did.
Okay.
And I think, I mean, obviously it was different on the day because it was so hot. That was
Yeah.
quite different from a lot of the training runs. In my mind, I had I sort of expected to get through about 18, 20 miles and then start to find it tough. So I
Yeah.
think the surprise was that I found it tough earlier and I had
Yeah.
to rally a bit. How am I going to deal with this? But that's, that's the day that it was. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I think a lot of people listening will have done one of those, potentially one of those marathons. And I think the heat is it's the uncontrollable. Like I've said, as you know, I've said before to you and others, it's the uncontrollable, the uncontrollables. And there's not, apart from your in race strategy, I don't think there's actually a lot you can do about it, because you can't really, because it was a last minute thing. Nobody really knew it was going to be that hot until the final couple of weeks, really, because you never know, do you, how things change. Um, so that's yeah, that was one of those things. But yeah, it's just like you said, it's just about managing it, really. So okay, thank you for that. What would you say to anybody who is similar sort of station in life to you, so mid to late 30s? Because funnily enough, I've spoken to a few people who've got they want to do a marathon before they're 40, because it's got that thing to it, hasn't it? That life begins at 40 ring to it. So what would you say to anybody who's similar to you, who is thinking about doing a marathon?
I would say if you want to do it, you can do it.
Yeah,
But I would also say decide if you want to do it.
yeah,
So I think for me this year, I decided not only have I entered the race, but I just want to do my best version of the
yeah,
race, whatever
yeah,
that best version is going to be.
yeah,
And I'm so grateful that that's the approach that I took to it,
yeah.
because I think it's just made the whole process of it enjoyable, not just
Right.
like the one day of the
Yeah,
race, but actually the whole training and learning about it. Um, that's worth it as much as the race is worth it.
yeah. Absolutely. And how have you found? Because obviously you're part of you mentioned you're part of a running group. When you've worked with me, we've had a little community there, as you know, as part of what we do. How powerful is it to have that? Do you feel a community around you while you're training for something like this?
Amazing, I
Yeah.
think. And I think possibly within the coaching group, because I did have the question, like, I know other people who are running, I know other people who are training for even this exact race.
Yes.
How much will this add for me? Absolutely loads.
Right.
And I think because it's in that coaching setting where it's not just that we've got the same goal and we're chatting about running because we all like running, but
Yeah.
actually we're sharing a bit more in terms of how we're approaching the training, what are the questions that we're working on. That so it's not just someone saying like, well done, you've
Yeah.
done your training run, well done, but it's gone a bit deeper than that.
Yeah.
And I think that has made it feel like much less of a sort of solo endeavor. And
Yeah.
I think maybe an example is the soreness and the difficulty that I was having in some of the training runs, I think could have demotivated me a bit because I initially felt like, oh, I should be getting better at this, and I don't think I'm getting better at
Yeah. I
this.
remember you saying, yeah.
And that
Yeah.
was, like, what if I'm getting worse at running? What am I going to
Yes.
do? And actually, I don't know whether I would have articulated that to other people because I don't know whether that's what they really want to hear. That's the conversation that you would have had with
Yeah.
those people.
Yeah.
And so I think actually unpicking some of that helped me to overcome it. And I think that's part of being in that group with
Yes.
those goals, as opposed to just a kind of conversation that you would have day to day
Yes.
with other people that you know.
Yes. Absolutely. And final question from me. How has the whole experience changed you?
A lot. And I think I don't yet have, can I put it into words?
Well,
Maybe.
yeah, I was going to say, is it something you can
Obviously,
put
this is
into
a
words?
podcast, and you were hoping for some words, so let's work on some of those. So I
Okay.
think I think yes, in terms there's a few different levels to it.
Yep.
One of them is I now know I can achieve in running things that I thought I couldn't achieve,
Hmm.
and I think that will fuel me to keep going and to do other things.
Yep.
The second thing is that so for the past couple of years before I did this, I was caring for my dad at the end of his life.
Okay.
And then my mother-in-law was also very ill at the end of her life, and I was helping to care for her. And that became my focus for
Yeah.
quite a long time.
Hmm.
And that was really important to me, and I'm really glad about that. Obviously, then, it's difficult to lose someone. And also at that point, not only have you lost them, but for me, a lot of my focus was based around thinking about those people. So I did have this sort of space of, well, what am I going to do now? And although I did do running and things like that, I think I was not really sure about how to kind of focus on myself
Yeah.
again. And I think I've really used this as a process of like, what is my life like? What am I like? What can I do?
Yeah.
And because I was able to run for the Alzheimer's Society and my dad had Alzheimer's, that was also quite important to me.
Yeah.
And I think that's important, like personally. And then I think there's also just an overall mindset thing. So I mentioned about like how am I making time for myself? How am I making
Yeah.
time to run in the day? That's part of it. But I think more than that, it's just having the kind of problem solving attitude that I've needed to have to make the training work.
Yeah.
Really demonstrating that to myself. This is how that works. This is how I can use that
Yeah.
to achieve something.
Yeah.
And I think that's more than running. And I think it will be more than running in my life. And, it sounds a bit cheesy to say that, but actually, I think that's, I really think that's something that I will take away from this is
Yeah.
have different tools to just approach problems and ways of thinking about things that maybe I didn't have in January. And I think that's quite important.
It is quite important. Thank you for that, and thank you for the openness as well. That's I'm sure that's very much appreciated. So, a lot of people that, including myself, actually, that you speak to, there's a why there, and it's often sometimes the worst things that can possibly happen to us drive us to do, incredible things that, honor somebody's memory. Obviously, I did my first one for my mom, and it was a great way to honor her memory in the best I could do without changing the tragic circumstances. So, yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And I know a lot of our listeners will as well. So, anything else from you, Lauren?
I think just also a thank you to you, which is
Okay.
really important. And maybe it doesn't always come across to you, but I think the coaching has been brilliant, so helpful.
Okay.
I've
Thank
learned
you.
so much, but also I think just completely reframed the whole experience of doing the training and the marathon. And I'm beyond glad that I made the decision to do that.
Okay. I appreciate that. I appreciate that very much, and thank you. And thank you for taking your time out of your day to speak to me today. I really appreciate it, and well done again. And
Thank you.
yeah, and hopefully that this is either reassured some people who were out there with you on Sunday, or inspired some people to maybe take that next step and look into doing something incredible themselves. So, yeah, thank you everyone for listening. Thanks to Lauren again. So, usual stuff at the end of this. Don't forget to hop over to Instagram and follow me over there. 12 months to marathon. I do appreciate that. I also want to say to the regular listeners, because I know there's a few of you out there, thank you so much for all your comments and messages that I had after the marathons at the weekend. From some people I didn't even know were messaged me and said thank you for your support, and I've never met these people, spoken to these people, so that meant a lot to me as well. And I do appreciate that what we're doing is valuable, and I know this will be valuable as well, because Lauren's been very honest with us and shared her experiences. So yeah, don't forget to like and share this podcast. The 5-star ratings, or the 4-star ratings on Spotify are the most useful things. So don't forget to take a little bit of time to do that for me. I appreciate it wherever you get your podcast from. Share it with anybody that you know who might be interested in running a marathon. And of course, if you do want to have a chat about anything coaching or anything at all, please reach out. Instagram is the best place at 12 months to marathon. So thank you everybody for listening. I appreciate that. And thanks again to Lauren, and I'll speak to you all very soon indeed.